on the one hand, there's a growing consensus across the political spectrum. When Obama said that we are going to send more troops to Afghanistan, there was no opposition to that. Whereas in the case of health reforms, which is probably very minimalistic, even on that there was opposition in terms of the government expenditure. And at the same time, also putting the blame today of the US crisis on China as well. So this whole thing's, I would not say it smacks of political problems, but it also has its own contradictions. I mean, you can't put all the blame on the United States. The Republicans are doing that, and so are probably Democrats. And in that context, also having a consensus on having fiscal expansion on military, but not have it on health reform. So it has probably a class as well as confrontation with China, with a different perspective, of course, in terms of it being a communist ruled country. So
I think you've really hit on some important points. There's always a danger when you have this kind of very deep economic crisis that's not resolved in a fair and reasonable way, and especially when people are so angry at what has happened to them. I mean, people who had good jobs have now lost their jobs. People are being thrown out of their houses. If you talk to somebody who has a job and they're complaining about something, they always say now, well, but at least I have a job. People are really on the edge. And so in that kind of situation, as you know, it's very easy to manipulate people into a xenophobic, an anti-foreign, an anti-ethnic minority position, and just try to shift the anger to others. And so there is this danger that as the Obama administration loses more and more political support, that there could be forces, and I doubt that Obama himself would do this. I think he's too principled. And I think there are many people in the Democratic Party who are too principled to do this. But I think there will be increasing pressure from others and on the peripheries of the party or in some states to start more and more using the foreign threat as a way of solidifying power, as a way of gaining control. And yes, China, there are a lot of people who blame China, and so they'll start agitating for tariffs or pushing China to revalue their currency. Perhaps there'll be another military emergency of some kind. I certainly hope not. But I think in this situation, there are a lot of very bad things that can happen. And I would urge the Obama administration to do two things. First of all, reassert control over the financiers in America. Put the financiers, the bankers, back in their cage through very serious financial regulation. And number two, restructure economic policy so it's focused on generating employment, making a transition to a green economy, and keeping people in their homes and putting more people back into homes. If they just could do that, and we know how to do that. We have the tools. There are a lot of smart people who've been working on this for a long time, know how to do this. That's what he should do. But the political forces, as you said, who are supporting the bankers, who are supporting the big businesses, who are supporting the multinational corporations, have been able to block even those within the party who want to get this done.
Despite having such a huge trade deficit and the economy being in a crisis-ridden state for so long, it's more than a year now, why is it still the case that the United States dollar maintain its hegemony in the world, where money is still flowing into a crisis-ridden economy? Is it the case that it is to do with the economic strength per se, or is it actually more in the direction of military hegemony and political hegemony that the United States exercise at the moment?
Well, I think it's largely two things. One is inertia, and partly once a reserve currency gets established and spreads throughout the globe, there are high costs to changing to a different system. I mean, once everybody uses Microsoft, it took a lot for Apple to come in and get people back. So there's an enormous amount of inertia, and the United States did a lot of work in the post-war period to establish the dollar as the key currency and to make sure that it stayed that way. So that's part of it. I said there were two things, there's actually three things. The second thing is that there's no other country or set of countries who really wants to have the reserve currency role now, because it can lead to some significant problems in their economies. It can lead to overvalued exchange rate because so much capital flows in. It can lead to the dominance of the financial sector over the real sector, and countries like China aren't quite ready yet to take that role. The Europeans, Europe is not really a politically united set of countries, so they can't take that role. So part of it is the absence of another role. And the United States has prevented a global currency, has done everything it can to prevent the widespread use of the SDR, the special drawing rights from the UN. So the United States has explicitly tried to prevent that. They've put a lot of pressure on the Middle Eastern countries to continue to price oil in terms of the dollar in order to maintain it. So it's not just the absence of another possibility, but the United States has actively tried to prevent another possibility. But the third thing is the point that you raised, military power. I think I had a graduate student, two graduate students many years ago who did dissertations on this, and they showed that military power of the United States is associated with the reserve currency role. And I think as long as there's a feeling in the world, justified or not, that the United States is the military hegemon, committed to property rights, committed to open financial markets, that they will still feel that the US dollar-denominated investments are the safest. The United States is the global protector of capitalism and financial markets, and as long as they're able to continue doing that, I think the dollar will be the reserve currency.
In that case, would you say that it would be very unfortunate that it would roll out, it could possibly go in that direction, that you need a stronger military hegemon to have currency shift from the United States in the form of dollar? I mean, that's how capitalism probably is unfolding. Maybe I'm exaggerating it. That you have, just as in the 1930s when the UK had given up the role of being the leader and they were implementing more of beggar thy neighbor policies, and the United States was not willing to take on the role of the leader, and then they developed their military hegemony over a period of about 10-15 years, after which the United States came into as the leader of the world. That would it be a tragedy that you need something like that again to have another country which would have a far more better military to control the world and have something of that sort to replace the United States?
One would hope that you could have two other possible situations. One is a country or a set of countries that are internally stable enough that people who use their currency can feel sure that their currency will be stable and their financial markets, private or public, whatever, are stable, and contracts can be enforced and so forth, without itself having to be able to project a lot of power in the world. But I think there's a point to what you're saying. As long as financial markets are globalized, unless you have some kind of global cooperation that together obviously has political stability, political strength, just by virtue of the fact that there's so many countries involved and committed to it, the only other option may be this military hegemon.
Thanks a lot, Jerry, on behalf of the News Click, where we would be putting up this interview.
Well, thank you very much.